Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's been a busy day for me. I hope you guys have been doing well. I'm doing well. And, I've been thinking, just been thinking recently, how many wheels have been released throughout this year alone. And it's been nothing short of amazing. It's been amazing. There's so many wheels. I mean, off the top of my head, let me see. We had the MSP. Then we had the high-speed MSP. Then we have the MSS, which are all iterations of the MSP, of course. Pretty much people, upgrading the MSP to something that they wish existed, me included. Then you have the KS18S. Then we had the Sherman. And now there's even the Gotway Monster coming out, and I'm not sure if this one's different, but the Gotway EX. Thanks to one of my subscribers who told me about it. I don't have time to watch these things, guys. I'm very busy. But there's a lot of wheels. And, this is a very interesting time in EUC world, because when I started, there weren't that many options. In fact, when I started, which was pretty late to me, compared to the guys who've been there way before me, that was a lot of options. To me, it was a lot of options. But to them, they were used to these wheels already. And by the time I got used to one wheel, I was already like 2 wheels behind, because they were so far ahead, you know what I mean? But today, we have just so many wheels. Your mind is just going crazy. Like, what to decide? What can I choose? Which wheel is good for me? Like, you end up making crazy decisions because a lot of you are literally brand new to this. And, I mean, in many ways, I am too. I'm not new to riding, but I'm new to just really paying attention to specs and deciding based on that. But I primarily go for speed and range. But there's so many other things you could look into. But I'm here today to talk about the veteran Sherman and the MSP. Torque version and high-speed version, but mostly the high-speed version. So let's start off with this. The veteran Sherman came out from pretty much Gotway. Let's not ignore that, because these engineers are from Gotway. But they came out from Gotway, left Gotway, because of problems in the company. And these problems are basically stemming from the fact that Gotway was not, well, supposedly, right? Nah, let's say they weren't. I like Gotway, but this one they can't escape. In many areas, they weren't listening to their customers. Number one is the shell. Number two is just features in general. For example, let's start with the lift switch, the speakers, bright lights, etc. All these things, InMotion had started a long time ago. And shout out to InMotion, because they've been listening to the customers forever, except in the case of speed and range. I don't know why. That's kind of like important, but I guess they have a certain segment of the market that they want to focus on. But anyway, then you have Kingsong, who's also been paying attention to their customers. But Gotway has been very stubborn, and I'm very stubborn too, but Gotway has been very stubborn in certain areas, and I'm not sure why. It could be because of, money, because if you look at Gotway and their website and just the, in many cases, the shoddy production of their cases, wiring, motherboard. I mean, all you have to do is compare an InMotion motherboard to a Gotway motherboard, and you can see the amount of care and research that goes into one versus the other. But what that does is, I feel Gotway in many ways started out like a backyard company, you know what I mean? When I was first introduced to Gotway, that's what a lot of guys were telling me, that, they're literally people who took what InMotion had and went into the backyard and put things together and made out this amazing wheel that had two most important factors that people really cared about in terms of people who cared about performance, was speed and range. Everything else just, back burner. And they did that good for a while. They really cared about speed, but then again, then you had the problem with quality control, right? So that was one thing that was really concerning, was quality control. But let's jump to the Sherman. Now, Sherman, obviously, they are engineers from Gotway, and they paid attention to these things. So Sherman didn't really start from nowhere. They started from Gotway. And I feel like they were the type that pretty much, we were watching together a live from the Black Cobra, where Black Cobra bought on Sean with the H and the question mark, where he was pretty much, talking to the viewers, and we were saying, hey, why doesn't Gotway listen to their customers? And Sean said that, he spoke to them directly, and they say they don't watch YouTube. Now, obviously, YouTube is not the only place they can get information. There's electric unicycle forums, and there's many others, right? But, they say they don't watch YouTube. And if that was their true answer to a question that was so burdened, a serious question from a customer, that shows negligence on their part. So here comes Sherman, seemingly out of nowhere. And it's not out of nowhere, guys. Let's remember, they came from Gotway, they have experience from Gotway, and they pretty much they were probably a group of engineers who saw the obvious things that Gotway was not caring about, but mattered. You see what I'm saying? And so they jumped ship, started their own business, and they came out with this fantastic wheel. So Sherman, I never paid attention to that wheel. I mean, EVX posted it on his channel, and I looked at it, but to me, it looked like, a wheel for off-roading. And I never really paid attention to it, let's be honest. And I had blinders on with Gotway, you know what I mean? So I go to New York, and I get on this thing, and the first thing that caught me was the pedals. I'm like, holy moly. I mean, wow, the pedals are amazing. I mean, granted, some people might say, hey, I want bigger pedals. That's fine, do what you want. But my immediate reaction to the pedal was, this thing feels so good. Like, it feels like for my feet. It wasn't a square. It seems like every iteration of any wheel from Gotway, In Motion, except In Motion. In Motion started, with some innovative stuff when they started with the V5F. But then they, went along the same path as everybody else and started making square pedals, whatever. But this one was pretty much, I think it has 8 edges or something like that. I don't know. But it's not a circle. It's not a square. It's literally designed for your feet, which is nice. I like that. Another thing I liked was the grip tape. The grip tape felt solid. I mean, wow. Like, if you're the type that likes the little pricky things that, that people modify their pedals to include, you won't really need that. It felt very solid. It sticks to your shoes, So I'm like, wow, right away. And so another thing that took me away was the way it looked on video versus when you see it in real life was just crazy. Like, every little detail, you get to see that they really thought about end production, because Gotway wheels feels like pre-production, or even before that, it looks prototype in many ways. Not because when I first got my Tesla, I thought the Tesla was not ready. I thought they sent me a wheel that was like it was a mistake or something, because when I picked up the Tesla to take it out of the box, I heard creaks, like creak, creak, creak. And then when I'm pushing it along I'm like, why is... And then when I got on it, I heard this creak, creak and bend. I'm like, what? Is this normal? But then I looked at the forums, and yeah, it was normal. So it's like Gotway conditioned people, to accept shoddy work, to accept work that is subpar. And I'm sorry, Gotway, but this is indeed subpar. I'm sure they have their reasons, but I've never crashed a Gotway wheel to the point where I ended up destroying it. I've crashed many wheels. I've even crashed an In Motion V5F, and I broke off the top part of the carrying spot. The plastic just came off. But I've never ever broken a Gotway, ever. And I've crashed many times at high speeds, but I've never slammed it against anything. You know what I mean? Except the concrete pavement. But so the reason I'm talking about Sherman right now is to say a few things. Number one, they obviously listen to not their customers, because at the time they didn't have any customers, but they listened to Gotway's customers and other customers as well from other companies. But electric unicycle, buyers, purchasers, I don't know, whatever. They listened to the electric unicycle community, and they did their best. They literally tried to do their best. And like I said, the first thing I felt on that wheel was just how well built it was. The trolley handle, which I didn't try, I saw someone else pull it up. It looked amazing. It didn't look finicky or anything. So the body of the wheel looked well made. Everything looked lined up. The framing of the wheel looked very solid. Everything was to, final production. You know what I mean? You guys remember Kia in the old days? Or Hyundai in the old days? That's what Gotway is. But it's not a Kia. Gotway is amazing. It's like a Lamborghini. But the quality of the Sherman is like a Lexus. Everything is well put together, like neatly. But, that's a good thing. But here's the thing. It seems like Sherman didn't have enough time to consider the costs of great work. So for example, when you look at replacing the tire or replacing the motherboard, these two things alone ends up being such a process. And in fact, when I saw Kuji Rolls try to change, he did it in a 3-minute video. But how long did it actually take him? Because if you notice, it was sped up and cut. But if you look at Marty, how long he had to do this. Granted, when you do something the first time, the second time, the third time, it gets easy. But goodness gracious, man, that's a long process. Wow. So it makes you, I'm not one for putting, slime in my tire. But trust me, if I get a Sherman, it's getting in there. I'm putting slime. I don't want to change the tire anytime soon. But it's a process. It is a process. And this was what I was trying to explain to the Black Cobra and many other people, is that, listen, if you want to pay for better quality, there are lots of trade-offs. I don't think, maybe there is, because carbon fiber seems to be a good product. You can use, cars use it, boats use it, they use it in the world, right? In other industries, because it's a really good material that, absorbs impact. But plastic in itself, by itself, is not a good answer for, using on a machine that's bound to hit the ground. But anyway, Sherman has so far done a great job in terms of cosmetics and in terms of features. But if you look at it, they missed out on a few things. There's no lift switch. It's for such a massive wheel. You would think, well, on the other side, I could see why they wouldn't have a lift switch, because it's such a big wheel. It's not something that you're going to stop and just randomly pick up and leave. You would do that with a Tesla. You would do that with a King Song. You would do that even with a Gotway. But not with a Sherman, man. 80 pounds, you think twice about picking that thing up, right? So that's my assessment as to why they didn't put it in there, because that thing is heavy. It's very heavy. Now, what else can we mention that they missed? There are a few things that they missed, but overall, in terms of pure performance and range and durability and quality, I can't say that they accomplished it 100%, because when you talk about quality, are you speaking quality in terms of how it's built only? Because it's a 2500 watt motor and it wasn't able to do the overheat hill. The thing blew up. It blew up. Like, the motor went crazy. There were no sensors. There was nothing in there to really give feedback to the rider except the motor going, it sounded like it was grinding. That's the only thing that the rider had, as a form of warning, is literally mechanical failure. And then if we all saw, the wheel just crashed, stopped. The MSP, obviously, with a heavier rider, made it up no problem. How was that even possible? Well, Gotway had many years of experience. Whereas Sherman, even though they were with Gotway, sure, there were certain things they didn't consider. Like, for example, there's not rumors, but V talked about it. EcoDrift, I believe, talked about it. And Marty definitely talked about it, where, and Kuji talked about it, where the covering of the motor wires was causing heat, causing certain, insulation to melt. That's a problem. How did you not see that? Like, did you not ride the wheel? What kind of people do you have riding the wheel before? You know what I'm saying? So these are things, but again, these, if we want to be harsh in the company, just same way you guys, the same way a lot of people were harsh on Gotway, if you want to be harsh in this company, clearly there's not a lot that they've considered in terms of safety. Because look, when I rode the Sherman, I rode it, my goal was to ride it to 40 miles an hour. I did 39 only because I looked down. I may have hit 40, I don't know. But the thing is, the reason I did that was to see whether or not this wheel is able to get to 40 with no issues. Not the beeps, just no issues. No types of vibration, no types of wobbling, no types of let up on the power, nothing. And it did that well. But I wasn't able to open up the wheel and see what happened as a result. But some people in New York were, and the people I mentioned were, and what they found was melting. That was a problem with Gotway. Gotway had melting wires. And it's funny because, you know, you can take the engineer out of the company, but I guess you can't take the company out of the engineer. I don't know, man, but that's crazy. Like, that followed them. Like, that's an issue that Gotway had, and it followed Sherman. We're less harsh on Sherman because Sherman seems to be the answer to Gotway, who's been ignoring us. You know what I mean? But yeah, so I don't know. I'm trying to determine whether to get a Sherman or the MSS. I mean the MSP high-speed version, because, you know, a lot of people don't know, but the MSP high-speed version has a projected speed of about 45 miles an hour, 2,000 watt motor. The Sherman also has a potential top speed of 45 miles per hour. Now, V said that she was able to do 52 miles an hour. You know, we'll see. We'll see if the Sherman and the MS, because if the high-speed MSP, you know, if the high-speed MSP is able to pull off the same type of performance, obviously it won't have the range because it's the same amount of battery. But I don't know, it's a smaller motors, so I don't know, maybe it balances it out. I don't know, guys. I don't really know that much math. But maybe that's something I'll have to get into later. You know, understanding the mechanics and the inner workings of how these machines work, because I just ride them. I don't really know how they work. Besides, you know, knowing the fact that it's a neodymium magnets inside, electronics, electromagnets, Hall sensors, but I don't know the programming. You know, I don't know what makes them run the way they run. It'd be very interesting to know that stuff. But the Sherman seems to be a great wheel overall. And you know, it's kind of funny. The Sherman in many ways is reminding me of the Z10 when it came out. When the Z10 came out, a lot of people were going crazy over the Z10 because the Z10 did everything right in terms of marketing. It did everything right. It looked good. It boasted interesting specs. You know, the wheel was awesome, which was very different than anything we've ever seen. You know, the Batman silhouette in the back. It's like, whoa, I'm going to be a superhero. This thing is awesome. Have we heard about the Z10 anytime soon? Has anybody heard about the Z10? Like, no, I've seen it somewhere. I haven't heard about it. Like, wow, what happened to that wheel? So, marketing-wise, and Gotway doesn't really market. Like, I mean, obviously, no electric unicycle company really markets. We do it for them by creating the videos and purchasing them, etc. It's like niche, you know? Niche, whatever. That's interesting. If that's how Sherman starts off, then that's really good. That's really good if that's how they start off. And it's funny because I don't think a lot of people are going to be using it the way Sherman intended for it to be used. I mean, if you're going to post a 45 mile per hour wheel with crazy range, I mean, my assumption is you expect people to be riding it at that, right? But maybe people won't. I mean, I'm sure people do, but I don't think, I mean, if you're going to go, so where I live, there are lots of turns. So, you know, there's not a lot of opportunity. Like this stretch right here is nice. I like it. I like this Morrissey Boulevard. I get to cruise up and down there. It'd be very nice to cruise at 50 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour, no problem. A lot of people did say that the 100-volt MSX at the time was the king in terms of speed, but, you know, I don't know. But Sherman, let's be honest. Let's come back to earth. Come back to earth. Sherman is the Sherman Veteran is a very heavy wheel. So in terms of practicality, I would say it's zero. It's not practical in terms of, just how heavy it is. It's not practical. Come on, guys, let's be honest. The idea of the electric unicycle is to be portable and to be, fast and have crazy range and have all these other things just come under that umbrella of, amenities. But in terms of like the overall need of the customer, it has to be portable, because if you're going up a hill, if you're going up into your office, excuse me, man, you can't be carrying this Sherman like this, excuse me, I gotta climb up. On the plus side, you could always put a chain around those two roll cages. You could put a chain around it and lock it up outside if you want, or downstairs if you want. But that thing is huge. And if you have an elevator for work, even better. But that thing is huge. Let's be honest, man. It's huge. The Monster is huge too, but even the Monster you can carry. I don't know. The Monster seems nice. It does. When I first saw the Monster on video, I was like, goodness gracious, that thing is tall. When I saw it in real life, I was like, wow, this is not bad. It's actually manageable. But when I saw the Sherman in real life, I was shocked because it looked smaller than I expected. But it's freaking heavy. So, shout out to all the guys out there who've already purchased your Sherman. Let us know how the Sherman is in the comments. What do you think? Do you feel you regretted it? Do you feel that's the best purchase you've ever made? Also, if it's your first time purchasing the Sherman, I feel like giving your opinion about what it is, and not the Sherman, I mean like if it's your first time purchasing a wheel in general, as a first rider, I don't think, look, opinions are opinions, right? Opinions are like noses. Everybody has them. You can give your opinion, but in my assessment, if someone bought the Sherman as your first wheel, your comments are not that important, in my opinion. I'm sorry, but it's not. Because that's like saying, okay, I want to learn how to ride a Ducati. I wanted a motorcycle, but I forced myself not to get a motorcycle because I love speed. It's just me. I have always had fast cars, always done crazy things, ever since I was a baby. So I rushed out of my mother's womb. But the thing is, it's not important, because it's like trying to learn how to ride the fastest V-Rod that Harley Davidson has ever made, and the fastest Ducati has ever made, or Suzuki, and you bought the top tier level as your first motorcycle. Your very first motorcycle ends up being the best on the market. How can you give your opinion when it's your first your first motorcycle? How can you give an opinion to people out there who's had wheels for all this while? Sometimes we need common sense, man. Like, this makes no sense. How can you cannot give opinions and have people who's never purchased a wheel in their life rely on you? This doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make any sense. I would never go to someone who's bought a motorcycle for the first time in their lives, even if it's the best motorcycle, and ask their opinion on it. And they don't know how to ride. This doesn't make sense. This is bad. We need to shut people down who has never ridden or hasn't ridden for a long time, giving their opinions on wheels, and they've never purchased a wheel other than that wheel. It doesn't make sense. You need experience, because it's funny, because a long time ago, when I first got my wheel, I never gave opinions unless I rode that wheel, rode it, crashed it, felt it. That's when I give my opinion. And even then, I would let people know, listen, this is my first time. If you're going to give your opinion on a Sherman, let it be known. It's my first time. I'm not really a rider. Just give disclaimers because people run with opinions. It's an opinionated world. I am an opinionated guy. But I have disclaimers. So I don't think, nowadays we have so many wheels and so many new riders come and just purchase these brand new wheels and they say things. They say strange things, and I'm looking at some of these comments, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I can't really respond, because how can you respond to nonsense? It's really hard to respond to nonsense, so you just let it go. But if you really are interested in learning how to ride an electric unicycle, and you're really interested in learning the craft and learning the wheel and knowing your wheel, and not trying to make mistakes, let me and others like me who's made the mistakes before, you know what I mean, teach you, Don't go out there with some crazy powerful wheel as your first wheel and then crash and break your jaw and break your knee and break everything, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst, don't ever get an electric unicycle, it's the worst thing, it's the worst sport, it's dangerous, it's gonna get banned, no, it's not gonna get banned. It's gonna get banned because you crashed, because you had a bad experience, and the experience you had should not have been. That's what I'm trying to say. The experience you've had should not have been, because you should have started somewhere lighter. You should have started somewhere smaller. Appreciate the sport. Appreciate the wheel. It's just common sense, guys. Smack, smack. Anyway, I have to choose. I have to decide which wheel I want. Do I want the MSS? Do I want the Sherman? And the reason I rode the Sherman the way I did is because when I went from the Tesla to the MSX, it was a natural transition, because the MSX's 84 volt wasn't that much more powerful than the Tesla, and it wasn't that much more heavier than the Tesla. It also wasn't that much more thicker than the Tesla. So it was not a hard transition, you know what I mean? It was like probably the third day, fourth day, and I was blazing the streets hitting 40 miles an hour, because that wheel is just crazy. But when I went to the MSP from the MSX, you would have thought that would be a natural progression too. That wheel took me a month to get used to. It took me a freaking month to really ride this wheel the way, because even if I was riding it like harsh, I still had reservations, because I could feel the limitations. And that's the thing. You build skills over time by learning through smaller wheels and riding a lot. And so when you turn, when you stop, when you brake, when you corner, when you avoid objects, people, all that stuff, your wheel is supposed to respond. But if your wheel that you just bought is not responding, then you know what these limitations are, because you've experienced it before with other wheels. But if it's your first wheel, you have no idea. You have no reference. You don't know what is good, what is bad. You just think this. It's absolute. In class when they were teaching us absolute numbers, it's absolute. You have nothing to reference. So I'm sorry to get riled up, but it boggles my mind how we treat every other thing. No one's gonna go out there and buy like a Lamborghini as their first car. In fact, if we see people buying fancy cars and it's the fastest car on the planet, and it's their first car at 16 years old, we go, man, this kid is rich, but also he's crazy. Why would you buy this car as your first car? It doesn't make sense. Anyway, I just feel like I have to put some common sense into some people. I'm glad you guys put common sense into me sometimes. Like when I look at your comments, of course. A lot of new riders were brought into this, niche because of Sherman. Sherman did an amazing job, because it shows you the potential of this machine. It shows you the excitement, But at the end of the day, we have to come back to reality. Sherman is amazing. Gotway is amazing. King Song's amazing. Emotion's amazing. But, it's just, we have to appreciate the technology. It's not a toy. This thing is not a toy. It's literally a machine, and it's powerful. Anyway, I went on a tangent. But I have to decide which is going to be better, the MSS or the Sherman. For me, so far I'm leaning toward the MSP speed version, only because when Marty took this thing on Overheat Hill and it shut off like that, you know, that was just the heel, but you have to understand that was, even though it was a hill and most people don't go in hills like that, it shows it's a condition. It's a condition that that wheel could possibly encounter again in a different situation. That's a problem. Because if I'm pushing this thing, let's say I'm pushing it to 55 miles an hour, the conditions that, I mean, we heard the motor grinding, but who knows? Maybe it's not the motor grinding that was the, you know, tipping point. It might have been something else. It might have been, I don't know. It could have been too much current being drawn. It could, I don't know. We heard the motor, but it might not have been the motor. It might have been something else. The capacitor was poof, you know? So I guess that's what I really wanted to say, you know? Appreciate the sport, and I'm really not sure what wheel I'm gonna get yet, but I'm really leaning toward the MSS. Yeah, I don't know. So let me know what you guys think. To you out there who got the Sherman, congratulations. Let us know how you feel about it. Not if it's your first wheel. Obviously, if it's your first wheel, you're gonna say something anyway, but let us know it's your first time ever buying a wheel. And if it's not your first time ever buying a wheel, and you are, you know, someone who rides in performance fashion, let us know how it feels. Let us know what you think about it. But I think Sherman has done a great start. They started off good. They just need to button up certain things, you know what I mean? Safety, I think they need more sensors. I think after reaching 50 miles an hour, you need sensors. Because when I crashed at 35 miles an hour in my Tesla, I didn't have gear. I crashed because I knew how to crash from my the other wheels. Then when I crashed on the, I didn't crash on my 84 volt for speeding. But when I did crash on the MSP, that's when I was like, whoa, if I crashed at 40 or 41 or whatever I crashed at, then I may need protection, anything, because all I got was this part of my hand was, you know, not sliced, but like scraped. And that was it. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna need more gear. Because my philosophy is gear up until you know your wheel. And then you can take off certain gears. Not everything, just certain gears. Because there is a way to fall. You can't account for every fall, but there is a way to fall. And yeah, so I'm curious. This is exciting though. It is exciting. Sorry for this long video. Actually, I'm not sorry for this long video. This was a great video. Guys, enjoy yourself till next time, okay?